Welcome to the SMB Community Podcast with your hosts, Amy Babinchak, James Kernan, and Carl Polachuk. Produced by and for the Small Biz Thoughts community. We're dedicated to making every IT professional a successful IT professional. Matic, Endpoint Security built on a zero trust, default deny foundation. Finally, a lightweight, simple to deploy, and easy to manage approach to application allowlisting, the perfect complement to your current security stack. No minimums and no annual contracts. Find out more about Matic by visiting pcmatic.com/MSP today.
All right, welcome back. This is James Kernan with Kernan Consulting, and we've got a very, very special guest, a good friend of mine and well-respected industry professional and veteran, Hartland Ross. Hey, Hartland, how are you doing today?
I'm good, James. As always, wonderful to chat with you and to be on the podcast today with you is much appreciated. And thanks for inviting me. And yeah, nice to catch up again.
Yeah. As you could tell through Hartland's really cool accent that he's not from the Midwest like me. So he's got a little bit of that Canadian twist in there, but obviously does a lot of work throughout the States and North America. But anyway, so good to have you back. This is your second time on the program, so we're blessed to have you. Hartland, we'll go into a little bit of his background, but he's got two different companies under one umbrella. So eBridge Marketing Solutions is his organization. They kind of started as a marketing organization for the tech business. We'll talk about that. But the second side of the business under that umbrella that operates separately is an M&A firm called the Host Broker. And there's a ton of M&A activity. We're going to talk a little bit more about that today. So, all right. So I'm going to hand things back to you, Hartland. Thanks for being back on. Tell me a little bit more. Let's go back in time a little bit of how you kind of got involved when you started eBridge and how you got involved in the industry.
Yeah, so we started over 20 years ago, and we started working with, we kind of cut our teeth in the hosting industry, and one of the reasons why we've, the site's thehostbroker.com, and now we work with far more than just hosting companies. But back when we first started, it was really hosting from a perspective of working with small businesses, shared hosting, and then moved sort of up the stack through managed hosting, managed infrastructure, data center operators, and then through to channel partners to the space, which included MSPs, as well. Some MSPs operate their own data center and or managed infrastructure. And so it's sort of a natural progression. And so we started 20 years ago as a marketing firm. We were growing these companies. And as we started to do that, we found that some of them were complaining, if you like, to us as a marketing firm that costs were going up. Their cost per acquisition were reaching numbers that were not sustainable. And this was in part because prices were being driven up on Google and other platforms and environments. And so they wanted some other options. How else can we grow other than organically? Also, the other issue is speed. Growing organically is not the fastest. You're onboarding a client at a time. And for groups that wanted to grow more quickly, it was a lot easier to say, well, what if we just bought somebody else and we transplanted, in the case of hosting, depending on the type, it could be hundreds of thousands of customers. In the case of MSPs, it could be 50, 100, 200 customers. How could we do that? And how are we going to reach these people? And so at the same time, though, as they were having those conversations with us, we were having conversations with groups that were having the other experience, which is, well, I'm burnt out. I'm tired of this 24/7 business. I haven't had a holiday in 10 years, or I want to do something else, or I've got another business or another idea. Is there anybody who would be interested in buying my business? And so we put those two groups together, and we built out our M&A practice. And so it was a sort of a natural evolution of the marketing business and all the contacts and businesses that we were familiar with, and the conferences that we would attend and exhibit at and speak at, to have these conversations. And so M&A now is sort of timely because hosting went through this considerable consolidation, and it's still an ongoing process. But there have been a tremendous number of transactions there. It was a very fragmented space, and we saw that same thing that we expected would occur in the MSP space and is occurring in the MSP space, which is this, again, very fragmented space, lots of small players, and lots of reasons why there's going to be consolidation. And so, we've seen that if we, fast forward to today, which is many years later.
Interesting. So let me unpack that a little bit. So big picture, you're in Vancouver, right? You're headquartered.
We're in Vancouver, and so you're right. I impressed that people pick up on an accent that I think, of course, I don't have. But in any event, yes, most of the businesses that we speak with, work with, buyers, sellers are in the United States, 80% or so, and then there's some in Canada, obviously, and in the hosting and infrastructure space, we actually work globally. But in MSPs, it's really a North American play.
Yeah, and we have a lot in common. And just hearing you kind of speak of the evolution over the last 20 years, there's really two ways to grow your business, right?
Yeah.
Number one, organically, train up the team that you have, make them better, hire additional, reps and engineers and grow organically, or growth by acquisition. So, my consulting practice, I run into that a lot as well. Clients I've worked with for years and years, it was always growth by acquisition. And now some of them I've worked with for, 5, 10, 15 plus years, they're like wanting to sell the business now. So it's kind of changing a little bit. But, I'm excited to talk with you about kind of what you are seeing in the industry and trends, from an M&A standpoint. So before I dive into that, I did want to dabble a little bit. Obviously, 20 years have really morphed and changed the way people market their business. If you were to kind of talk maybe at a high level, what types of things are you seeing working well kind of in this post-COVID timeframe?
Well, so it was punctuated by COVID, which changed everything because the in-person options disappeared, right? Whether they were conferences or sales presentations or lunch and learns or client appreciation dinners and golf tournaments and all these types of things were no longer options. So that was an interesting period there. I guess overall, the market is competitive. It's always been competitive. I would say it's become more competitive. Prices have been driven up for acquisition costs. So everybody's always trying to look for what's different, what's new. Ironically, what's new is old in some cases in terms of like going back to offline methods. The lunch and learns has actually been quite a good thing for a lot of groups that they've put on and client appreciation events and that type of thing. We're looking at doing, we do, but we look heavily at doing outreach to clients via or prospects rather via email. Less so with Google because the costs for acquisition are so high. We used to do a lot of advertising through banners, display ads, that type of thing, and those were productive at one time, but they haven't been for IT for a while.
Yeah. I mean, indirectly, what I'm hearing you say and what I'm seeing is that one, you need a plan, but you need a diverse plan. You can't just rely on cold calling, or you just can't rely on just sending emails and expecting to get great results. And we learned a lot through COVID, I think, that we had to force ourselves to go more online, get creative, and but I like the idea of kind of diverse marketing to pinpoint down in the different geographies and the different markets that all the listeners are in. But I think it's important to get a plan and keep track of what you're doing, so you see what works and what doesn't. But anyway, that's interesting. I wanted to just kind of bring that up real quick, and how that kind of flows, I guess, into the host broker, your M&A business. Let's talk about that a little bit. You know, what would a normal transaction look like, or a normal engagement look like for you? Could you walk people through what that process would be?
Yeah, would you be coming from the perspective of a buyer or a seller?
Yeah, so great question. Let's kind of talk about maybe a buyer. You know, somebody wants growth by acquisition. They want to buy something maybe in a different geography. Let's kind of talk about that.
Sure. So we have these conversations with buyers or sellers, but with buyers on a regular basis. And some of them are, let's call them professional buyers. That's kind of, they've done a ton of deals. They've looked at a lot. They're sophisticated. They may or may not, the owner founder may or may not be the one leading the charge. They may even have, whether it's a CFO or even an outsourced kind of firm that is managing that on their behalf.
Yeah.
But the first question is to understand what they're looking for, and then we can provide one or both options as solutions for the request. So the first one is we publish a list of companies for sale every single week. It comes out on Wednesday. It's free to subscribe. It comes out through thehostbroker.com. And if you're on that list, can get notified of new businesses for sale. The second option as an MSP is to tell us what you're looking for. And we call this our wish list, which is you tell us what you're looking for. We will note that down, and if and when we have matches to those criteria, we will proactively reach out and notify you that we have an opportunity that might be a fit for you. So a little bit of kind of armchair on the behalf of the buyer, where you don't need to do quite so much work, but I think it's always a good idea to monitor the list on as well to make sure there are other opportunities that might fit. And of course, if you change your criteria, unless you notify us, you're not going to hear about those opportunities. So those are kind of the two things, and we would just talk through expectations typically of valuations and processes. And of course, the more sophisticated someone is, probably the fewer questions that they're going to have. But someone who's doing this for the first time, happy to chat through all the different nuanced aspects of the buyer's journey.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Now, are you seeing on your side, and I know there's a ton of activity across the board, do you typically, from your business vantage point, see more, do you work with more buyers, or do you work with more sellers, or is it kind of 50-50?
This is kind of analogous to real estate. I think there's always more buyers than there are sellers, and so finding sellers is a little bit of the holy grail. Like, that's always what we're interested in, only because we've got a lot of buyers. So we need to kind of fuel that funnel, that pipeline of demand. So the answer to your question is that we speak with more buyers than we speak with sellers. Having said that, I do think the tide is turning a little bit. I don't think we're a long way from it flipping 180 degrees, but we are seeing more sellers come to the market for a variety of reasons. COVID was, sort of part of it in the beginning, but now we're seeing some other trends.
Yeah, I'm seeing that as well. It's interesting. You kind of brought up that there's sophisticated buyers, and they know exactly what they want. They've been involved in multiple transactions already. And to me, what I'm seeing there is more people that just have like set formulas, and they'll talk to lots of people. And if it fits in that formula, then they're going to go with it and do their due diligence, move forward. If it doesn't fit their cookie cutter approach, they just kind of move on to the next one. Is that kind of a fair assessment? It seems like there's a lot of buyers like that.
The sophisticated ones, absolutely. They're going to have thresholds for revenue, or more likely thresholds for EBITDA, below which they're not interested. So there's that element. And then they're going to cut to the chase, whether it be with respect to geography, talent. Does talent come with it? Yes, no, we're not interested.
Okay.
Is there, we're only interested in, we've got to focus on healthcare. Is there any portion of this business or a significant portion that focuses on healthcare? Yes, no, okay, I'm interested or not. That type of thing. So as you're rightly pointing out, it's kind of cut and dry. And I think for them, it's easy because it allows them to keep moving. Of course, the more specific they are, the harder it is to find those opportunities. I would say that those who are not as sophisticated, haven't done transactions or haven't done many, tend to be a little bit more, the kind of shiny object syndrome of looking at a lot of deals. And there have been many instances where I know them well enough to know that it's not the right fit for them, but they need to kind of talk through all the details to appreciate that might be the case. And and I think this kind of goes into another point, which I'm a believer of, which is that if you're building a business, you don't want to build a hodgepodge of there needs to be some criteria with which you're screening the opportunities, so that you end up with a more of a homogeneous customer base and business, rather than multiple tech stacks and offices all over the place, and it's kind of there's no real integration. Different industries, different size customer base that are being serviced, etc.
Yeah, Hartland, you brought up something really important. I just want to highlight this because there's a flurry of activity, and a lot of my MSP customers, claim that they get 1-2 emails a week about people wanting to buy their business, right? And you could waste a lot of time if you chase after, spend a lot of time with some of these folks. Now, some of them are legitimate buyers that are serious, and there's a lot of looky-loos out there too that I think are just sending one email to 10,000 people. But kind of talking about that real quick, what's the timing of something when somebody would engage? They are a serious buyer, serious seller. What's the timetable look like? Or is it 30, 60, 90 days, 6 months? What are you seeing?
To close.
Yeah, from start to close.
So if someone is a seller and asking us that question, the answer is typically around 4 to 5 months from the time that we list an opportunity to the time that it closes. But if it's a buyer and seller together, they've fast forwarded through the process because they're not going through like we've got it on our list and there's different groups inquiring and then putting together offers and asking questions and qualifying calls and things like that. And all of that takes time. But if you've got 2 groups that have come together and an offer has been made, from that point to close, assuming it does close, and I'll be honest, a lot of those don't go anywhere, but I would suggest that it's something in the sort of 60 to 90 days would be a typical time frame. We've seen some that have just dragged on. I've got one that's still in play from November of last year, and by both accounts, it's still active. But these are not normal, and it's particularly if there's a no shop on it, meaning that the seller isn't able to talk to anybody else. If they're motivated to sell, they should be making sure that that the things are contained. There's momentum, right? And as a buyer, it's not fair to kind of have somebody locked down. 60 to 90 days. Sometimes if there's a bank involved, especially if it's an SBA loan, these can go on a little bit longer, more like at least 4 months anyway. Yeah.
And the point I was going to make is there are a lot of looky-loos out there, and it's important to just find the serious buyers that it's really a win-win. It's a good fit. And you need a professional like the host broker, like Hartland, that's been around the block, to help, weed out all the noise. Because I've seen lots of bad transactions happen. There was a horrible one that I had seen from the sidelines that someone I knew had bought a business. They didn't go through a broker. They ended up, buyer, seller. They thought it was a good fit. They ended up buying majority of the money went down on the asset purchase, and then the whole staff quit. They didn't have employee agreements in place, and a lot of the value of the business is the people, right? Yeah. And that's kind of something that you should have on your due diligence checklist, is employee agreements to make sure that you're protected. So that's kind of scary. So I'm seeing the same thing around timetables, normally a month of conversations and before you get an LOI, and then you do your due diligence and close anywhere from 60 days to 90 days. So that's kind of the norm for, $1 to $5 million or $1 to $10 million transactions. Are you seeing in 2022 specifically, are you seeing multiple offer scenarios, or is it normally one offer, they go down that path and then they close?
If the seller is wanting to market themselves, there will be multiple offers.
Okay.
At the very least, there'll be many groups looking at it, but in all likelihood, there'll be multiple offers. There are some groups that feel that they aren't interested in having a lot of conversations with different groups. They're not interested in investing what is really arguably a lot of time to put into the process. And so they may say, look, if I can find a group that provides me an offer that I think is reasonable and that is a good fit, I don't need to talk to anybody else. I'm quite happy to explore that and see where it goes and to try to close with them. So there are groups that are absolutely like that. But as I say, there's also those who are looking for more of a competitive kind of process. And if those competitive processes are run, there will be multiple offers. And so, but I think the important thing here is people oftentimes get hung up on the fact that, well, it needs to be like, I need to be the top offer, the highest offer. And candidly, I mean, we just did a transaction, I don't know, less than a month ago, and the buyer was not the top offer. Mm-hmm. In fact, he was hundreds of thousands of dollars less. It was it was over $2 million deal, and he was not the top offer, but he still got it. And so these things, it comes down to more than just money. It comes down to fit, rapport, confidence, experience in doing transactions, and culture, as you talked about, James, like with respect to employees, because employees don't quit if there's a good culture. If there's not a good culture, employees are more likely to quit, and if they quit, then the customers will end up oftentimes being the victims because they don't get the same level of service that they might have been accustomed to. So they're all very important aspects, and so money's not the only driver.
Yeah. One of the questions I had for you was the emotional process, the hand-holding that's required. And I've been through a lot of transactions, and I guess more early in my career, it was more of me buying businesses, and I didn't really see that much. But since then, I guess since I've been consulting the last 15 years, I've been involved in over 24, either acquisitions or mergers. And there's a whole emotional element and psychological element that kind of goes along with that. And, you probably have become an expert with that, of hand-holding people through the emotions of things. And to Hartland's point, I think he's spot on. It's not all about the money. It's about the fit. Nobody wants to see their blood, sweat, and tears business fall apart and go to shambles and all the employees get let go. If that's what the plan is, they want to see it grow and prosper. Right. So, that I know that's really important, but getting back to my question about the emotions, are you seeing that as well? Of kind of walking the business owner through that emotionally?
Yeah, I think it's hugely important. And there's a number of different sides to that question, right? So one major issue is, and I don't think that buyers oftentimes fully appreciate this aspect. And I think it's important that if they can try to wrap their head around it and put themselves in the shoes of the seller, which is the seller has built up this business for some period of time. They've got a team of people who they feel some allegiance to, some gratitude for supporting them. They want to take care of them. And they are at some point in their life, it could be retirement, it could be earlier than that, but they're now going to sell their business, hand over the keys to all of this, to what they've built, and do something differently with their life. Maybe they're going to be an employee for a bit, but that's not going to probably be a long-term thing. And so in their mind, they're thinking, geez, I'm going to get this big payout. What am I going to do with that payout? So they're thinking new house, they're thinking new cars, they're thinking holiday, they're thinking things for their kids or whatever, and paying off debt, whatever that, and a life-changing, those are all going to be life-changing events. So they've got those in their mind. They've also got the perhaps anxiety around what am I going to do next, right? They got to figure out their next move. Nobody wants to just, most people don't want to sit on the couch all day long. They got to figure out something else that they're going to do with their life, unless they're retiring, and then they presumably got some retirement goals. But there's that aspect. So I think that's huge, because what happens is that they go through that, and then, oh, what happens then when they hear from the buyer that, hey, we found some issues and we don't think it's the right fit for us, and unfortunately we're going to withdraw from the process. This person is now basically at the altar waiting for the I do, and they've just gotten declined, and they now have to mentally unwind all of these things that have been going on in their head. So that's a huge piece. That is, I see, and it's very stressful for the seller to be going through this emotional roller coaster. Yes, I'm going to sell. No, I'm not going to sell. Yes, I'm going to sell. No, I'm not going to sell. It goes up and down. The other piece that I think you were also talking about is the emotional piece around. Oftentimes we see it around trust, right? So they feel that the other side is. Why are they asking for this information? What do they really want? Do they have ulterior motives? They read into things that the other side says that really aren't there, which starts to erode the trust aspect, and they get frustrated. And so as you're saying, like, my job a lot of times is to have conversations and with groups either side, and try to bring them kind of back to the table. Where they can see things a little bit more rationally and kind of just get through it. And sometimes the ugliest part is towards the end, where there might be some issue that comes up, and they just need to kind of one foot in front of the other, head down, and get it done, and they'll be fine once they come out the other side. But talking about knowledge.
Right. Yeah, you just have to talk it out, make it work. Yeah, that's an important part that I wanted to bring up and mention to you. So I can't believe how quick the clock is going here. We have a few minutes left, and I have just a couple other quick questions. What else are you seeing trend-wise? Do you feel like it's more of a buyer's market, seller's market? This year and coming into next year. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, no secret that there's all this discussion with respect to the economy and the R word, and whether we're in one or will be in one. Without trying to speculate on that, it's certainly created a moment for pause with some groups. And I only heard from one group who basically said to us, I guess a month or so ago, that they're kind of pushing the pause button and just kind of waiting and seeing what happens. We heard a lot of that during the beginning of COVID, which is, is the world going to end? Let's just push pause and we're not going to do anything. Most people aren't stopping, but what they are doing is adjusting their valuations, specifically because those who are financing deals through debt, because interest rates are going up. And so for them to have a return on investment that is going to be in line with previous numbers and what they consider to be acceptable range, if interest goes up, valuations have to go down. And so we're seeing that a little bit, offers being a little bit lower. However, offers being lower doesn't necessarily mean that a deal is going to get done at lower than it was before, if you were to measure them all, because there are a lot of cash buyers out there still, cash reserves, and those groups still want to deploy these funds. So I think that if things continue, we may see some valuation adjustments, corrections, if you like. But I think that in the short term, it will mean that there'll be some more lower offers, and the buyers may not be, sellers may not have quite the degree of choice with offers that they had before. But
Yeah.
right now we're not seeing too much there. The other one that I think would be important here, just in the interest of time to get in, is just to talk about the other thing that we've seen more of, and does it make it a trend? I don't know, but our experience has been that we've been talking to more groups that are interested in retiring now than used to be the case. There were lots of reasons for people to sell. They had other businesses, they were stressed out, they were burnt out, they had partner feuds, health issues. There's all of these things, and those things are still there, and they're going to continue to be. But the retirement discussion that has been going on now for years about baby boomers retiring is, I think, starting to rear its head, and maybe earlier in IT, because it's a bit of a stressful business to be in, and some groups are saying, I'd like to either get out or look at the options for getting out. And in some cases, they create themselves a bit of a soft landing by selling out some or most of the equity, and then keeping a small bit, and then retaining some kind of role in the business for some period of time. And then they can exit more easily, knowing that they don't own the business anymore. They've just been an employee of the business they used to own. And now they can move into retirement.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Well said. Agree with you wholeheartedly. So we're going to run out of time. So one final question I guess I have for you is, if people are thinking about selling their business, what things should they be doing right now before they reach out and contact you?
Well, one of the big ones that you're going to hear, doesn't matter what industry you're in, is to look at your books, right? To clean up your books, clean up your financials, taking a look at, ideally you'd have a correlation between your revenue line items and services that are offered and your cost of goods sold. So if you're selling hardware and you've got a hardware revenue line item, you've got a cost of goods sold for hardware, and you can compare to see what the margin is there, and that you're actually, there is a margin. In some cases, we've seen those upside down, right? The cost of goods sold for hardware are greater than the revenue. So something's gone awry there. And looking at your financials to make sure that those line up. Also, ideally to remove personal expenses and make those adjustments. We will do that for you, and buyers understand that those are going to be in there, but the less of them you have, the better. And then beyond that, contracts, there's so many other things, but another big one that we like to check on is to making sure that sellers have contracts that can be assignable to a buyer, because if they can't be assignable or they don't have contracts, both of which are going to have impacts on valuation. But honestly, James, there's probably far more that I could talk about on that topic than
I asked you a huge question, and on purpose, I asked that just for a couple of your quick thoughts. I actually, on that specific topic, Hartland, I wrote a white paper of here's the 8 things you should be doing today before you think about selling your business. And you touched on 2 of them, contracts and clean books for sure. So I think you're spot on. Well, one of the things you mentioned that I'm sure all the listeners want to sign up for is that weekly email. Do they just can they sign up on that with the hostbroker.com? Is there a subscription link up there?
Yeah, so if they go to the website, thehostbroker.com, and subscribe, it's free to subscribe. I'll just caution you that there is a double opt-in, so check your inbox, hit confirm, and you'll be on the list for the next mailing, which typically comes out on Wednesdays. If you're interested in being added to our wish list, meaning you tell us what you're looking for and that we'll also reach out to you proactively, please email us info@thehostbroker.com, and we can send you a link to complete the details on that as well.
So I think you just answered my final question, is what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Should they just email you at the info@thehostbroker.com or through the website, or call? What's your preferred method?
We've been in business long enough to realize that everybody has their preferences. So do whatever you feel you'd like to do. I can be reached at Hartland@thehostbroker.com. Hartland is HARTLAND @thehostbroker.com. You can email info as well, and one of my team members will receive that. You can go to the website and subscribe, and you're welcome to give us a call. Phone numbers on the website as well. We're Pacific time.
All right, fantastic. Yeah, so listeners, I encourage you, if you're thinking about buying or selling a business, reach out to Hartland and his team. These guys are real pros in the industry. They've been doing it for over 20 years. I've been working on and off with a lot of different brokers around the country, and these guys are the real deal. So Hartland, thank you so much for being on the program today. I will let you go, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, James. Really appreciate it. Take care. All the best.
You bet.
Thank you for tuning in to the SMB Community Podcast. If you found this useful, interesting, or fun, please subscribe, share with your friends, and give us a thumbs up on your favorite social media. Please check out the show notes at smbcommunitypodcast.com and give us your feedback.